Welcome everybody into the Wisdom of Cycles with me, Mary Kennedy from the Celtic Wheel. I'm here with the great astrologer, Charlotte Donachie, and we're going to really share with you some wisdom around the Summer Solstice 2021, the astrology, and some wisdom from our ancestors and from the Celtic tradition on the solstice. That rings true for all solstices, but with Charlotte's going to then weave in, what's the astrology? What's happening over this really potent threshold? So welcome, Charlotte.
Thank you. Lovely to be here again.
Great. So Charlotte's Wi-Fi is a little touch and go because she's such a wanderer. She's in her boat wandering. So anyway, we're going to move and work with it and see what happens. So maybe I'll start as usual with giving a little kind of download about the solstice and what energies, how to maybe attune to the energies of this great apex in the cycle. And then we'll do a little bit of tuning into the astrology, and then we'll both share a little practice and exercise in how you can work with this energy at this time over the next couple of days. We're just a couple of days away from the Summer Solstice 2021, which is on Monday. I'm right, Charlotte, right? It's on Monday?
Yes. Hang on, let me just
Astrologically, check. What's the...
32 a.m. on Monday.
Can you say that? We just didn't catch that last piece.
Oh, sorry, it's 4:32
right, okay.
a.m.
So it's
on
Sunday
Monday,
night into
21st.
Monday. And of course, in the Celtic tradition, all these festivals start on the eve of the festival. So light your fires, get around your fire pits on the Sunday evening, and maybe spend Saturday or Sunday doing some of the exercises and little personal rituals we're going to offer here. So the summer solstice, as I said, longest day of the year, shortest night, the apex of the cycle. It's the sun is reaching its pinnacle, its highest point in the sky. I've just been in the country doing a kind of walkabout for a couple of weeks, and I've been down, borings and hedgerows along the country lanes. They're just like so full and so vibrant, and oh God, it's so beautiful to feel the fullness and vibrancy and all the shining and blossoming. And that's really, with the shining sun, the warmth and strength of the sun, it's about that kind of fullness and power. And if we look at the solstice, it comes in our at a time in our lives, it comes when everything's really flowing, everything is full and blossoming. And it's a really, one way to look at it is to go, well, what would I look like? Or what would my life look like if I was living fully into my potential, if I was shining brightly? So that's a lovely way to kind of move into the energy of the solstice. And yet, in this energy of in this moment when there's a turning happening, the moment where we reach the pinnacle is the moment where we start to turn back towards the darkness. And that is, again, another amazing and beautiful way to work with this time, is to look at, okay, well, what is really going well in my life? What is shining? What am I in my full potential around? And not just what is, but when I come to that point is, to always remember that this will pass, that this is impermanent. I mean, I took this is the white thorn. So I don't know if you know the white thorn here, it lines it's been lining all the roads and lanes, and it's been just this blossom whiteness, delicate, beautiful white flower. And look at it now, in this last couple of days, it's just dying. It's turning pink and then dying. So that's a really important part of, first, can we claim our power? Can we move into our shining and lead from that place deep inside us, from our deep soul light can we shine outward? And then when we do, can we hold it with humility, because it will pass. And as the cycles, like the seasons come and go, can we just hold this with a lightness, knowing that we're always vulnerable? And I think one thing that COVID taught us is that we're not immune to our vulnerability, that like we are so vulnerable. And even when we're, in our highest point in whatever domain in your life, whether it's your relationship or whether it's your career or whether it's your health, that, we know, if we can just keep in mind that at the moment of the summer solstice, the winter solstice is also very present, because we start to move back towards it. So there's so much I could say about the summer solstice, but I think that's what's really with me this year, the impermanence. Well, first, what would it look like if you were fully living into your potential, and how close are you? Are you living in your potential? And the world needs you to live into your potential. So what would that look like, and what's getting in your way? And the second piece is, when you do move towards your potential, or if you're in a high point in your life, can you know that it is also the most vulnerable time, because it's not going to last, and that is not something that has to be a negative, but rather something that makes you live into it more. So that vulnerability, and that power and vulnerability, it's that great polarity. And can we start to really embrace both the light and the darkness, rather than in our contemporary culture that just has put such value just on the light, the bright, the big, the faster. Yeah, so that's really, where I would start to put my attention over the next couple of days. So just over to you, Charlotte, to see how that resonates with the astrology, or what more you want to weave into that piece.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, apologies for everyone. I am a bit of a nomad, so my internet connection's permanently changing. Talking about impermanence, and it's also Mercury retrograde, so it's kind of standard at this. Really is a bit iffy. But I'll get the messages across as succinctly as I can, and obviously Murray, just stop me if I speak and if everything gets a bit blurry or you don't catch what I'm saying. But just grasping and taking hold of what you've said there. The astrology of this particular solstice speaks to me in a way that is about the kind of struggle that we're having at the moment between the past and the future. And that is thematic of this year. The planets Uranus and Saturn, which is innovation versus tradition, are having an argument all the way through this year and into next year. So a lot of us are finding ourselves, drawn in, sort of pulled, stretched in two directions. And it's about control and freedom, or control and truth, which is the wave that's really coming up in this summer. And I think the solstice is going to bring another wave of that energy through. But in a very emotional way, because it's a very watery expression, and the element of water represents our emotions. So, just picking up on vulnerability, the solstice is when the sun ingresses into the sign of Cancer. And Cancer is the sign in the zodiac that represents the mother archetype, and innocence, vulnerability, sensitivity, intuition, psychic sense. It's probably, I've always said that I think Cancer is the most neglected in our society of the zodiac signs, because we actually live, certainly in the West, in a very Capricorn society, which is the opposing sign, quite emotionless, very business oriented, very much about getting things done, very practical, but not very nurturing to the more feminine side and the more mothering side of the self. So I sort of feel, when I tuned into the solstice, what I was feeling was a need to reconnect, not escape the past, but actually reconnect to the past and the innocence of the past, actually, in order to help us build the future that we might want individually and collectively. So, you know, there's a few planets at play here, obviously, and I won't go into masses of detail so as to confuse everyone. But the ones that really stuck out to me were the planet Mars, which is our mission. You know, it's the warrior inside of us. It's the very self-directive, kind of selfish, needfully so, self-involved, but passionate force of fire and nature within us, is in the sign of Leo, which is leadership and playfulness and creativity. So there's a Martian energy that's giving us this like real desire to shine our individual light, to express our own version of creativity into the world. But that Mars is actually having a bit of a uncomfortable conversation with the moon, who is the ruler of Cancer. And the moon is in the water sign of Scorpio, which is very much related to intensity and shadow, and, you know, bringing up the more uncomfortable parts of the emotional world in order to alchemize. Um, you know, moon in Scorpio, that actually also relates to the past, and Cancer kind of relates to the past as well. So this bringing in, it's like the warrior wants to charge, and the moon is like, hang on a minute, I feel like this. Why aren't you listening to me? You know, why didn't you give me this when I was a child? Why have you ignored this? And the thing about the moon in Scorpio is any time that moon suppresses its feelings or override the emotions, it's disaster, cataclysmic, because the great gift of moon in Scorpio is the ability to feel before anything else, you know, feel what others, intuitive, uncomfortably so. But what this speaks to me is we're getting this wanting to charge into a new world, but there's lots of stuff that hasn't been sorted out yet, and we need to go back to go forwards. And the outlet point for this is the planet Neptune, which is imagination, creativity, music, fantasy, also confusion, illusion, delusion. So what we might see over this time on a collective scale is we might find that as this wave of very strong emotion comes through, of like confusion coming out, particularly in the media, and a lot of different truths starting to really clash, but in an emotional way, people not being able to bury their feelings about things, you know, and maybe anyone who's been sitting on the fence might find themselves falling very quickly off the fence and bruising their bum, because it's like it's like you've got to feel now, you can't suppress, you know, what's going on. So it is like a time, you know, the solstice, where, as I say, on an individual and collective scale, we get a bit of a whoosh of feeling coming through. And the other thing we've got going on is the planet Jupiter, which is in Pisces, and Jupiter rules our belief systems. He rules our perspectives and what we really believe in the world. He's stationing to go retrograde, which essentially means that our belief systems are coming up for review for, you know, the next, probably, I think it's until October, but we're all going to, we might see some truths come out that really shatter our beliefs, that really change up what we thought was going on, which again is going to be very purgative, because it's like the, you know, moon, it's rejection, it's abandonment. So all of these feelings are like the deeper fears that run underneath humanity in general. So really to harness this energy, it's about grounding the spirits. Vesta's involved as always. She's opposing Neptune, so she's kind of saying to Neptune, we need to bring your spirit in so that you center and that you can become more embodied in your own truth, your own sovereignty. That's the thing that's going to safeguard you and immunize you against the chaos. Because it's, yeah, to stay centered.
So,
It's a
Charlotte,
time to really go into maybe a little bit of.
no, we just lost you
Did you
there a
lose
little
me?
bit. You were speaking about that in all the chaos, it's to come back into your sovereign center. And then you
Yes.
just
So
broke
yeah.
it.
Okay. So yeah, just saying that things like meditation.
Yeah, we're losing, yeah. So I'm assuming you're talking about meditation. Yeah.
Ways, being out in nature, anything that you can do.
So
Yes.
anything that brings you back
Yeah,
into
sorry,
your
my
thing.
connection gone all over now.
Yeah, it's just coming. It's a little choppy at the moment, so we'll
Yes.
blame
Yeah.
Mercury. And
It's
yeah,
a little choppy. Okay. So yeah, to it's grounding the spirit. So anything that helps you to just embody the magic of yourself, which comes from childhood. So reconnecting with the past, reconnecting with your innocence, Cancer, allowing vulnerability. That's really key in this particular solstice. Is allowing our vulnerability to come through and allowing ourselves to feel. There's nothing wrong with feeling. They're just emotions.
it's funny because what that strikes me when you talk about that, there's so many things that kind of resonate there. It's like to go into nature and see the impermanence, but see the blossoming and see that brings me always back into my center, brings me back into my childlike, just picking flowers, it's like I'm deeply re-embodying that young girl that was always kind of out enjoying, not always, but a lot of, I loved flowers and I loved I had a
Yeah.
kind of sense of the fairies popping up around the place. So,
Yes.
it's that kind of that playful Leo, and the magic. And what also struck me there was, that sense of pausing and going back before moving forward is that fairy and Cancer being that water, because our problem with, or not the problem, but what's really I see is happening in this time of soul making when the world is changing so much, is we're moving from what was a very, I think what you said was it was Capricorn, that opposite to Cancer, which is like the solar masculine gone mad. It's like that young Maponos energy that is just gone into excess and doesn't never stops and is always going forward and delivering and producing. And it's like, I love that, because this is the solstice, the summer solstice is a sun, of course, a sun festival, and the sun represents growth. But if it becomes too excessive, because that's what's the shadow of this, is to all this excess. So I love that. I don't know whether it was Neptune or who you said is actually calling us back to say, hang on, just pause, don't move forward so quickly. That Mars piece that you spoke about. Yeah, so that's so important. And I love the resonance of that at this time. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. And just to pick up on that a little, Mars, Leo is children. So, even this Mars in Leo, it's like you need to march forward with your inner child. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to creatively express yourself. We've lost the magic. We were, I suppose, just molded to a society where magic wasn't appropriate.
Yeah.
As children. And so, what this solstice is asking us to do is to go back, swim back through the waters of memory and connect with that child. And there will be pain, there will be water, there will be grief that comes from those times, because having your magic or your wings cut off as a child was a painful experience that most of us have chosen to forget, because it was painful. And we just watched our world kind of go like this. But now it's going back out again, and so we're reclaiming the lost self, the lost magician, the lost child, all of those things. And Neptune helps us with that, because Neptune is this beauty and this innocence and this, sometimes naivety, but magic, and fantasy, and all the things that our imagination did so easily when we were young.
Yeah, and this kind of over domestication of us as children, and because we were, it was educated out of us in a way.
Yes, completely.
So yeah, beautiful to bring that childlike energy in, and lighting fires. I remember St. John's Eve. The child in me, as a child, right up to my teenage years, just the magic and enchantment of the bonfire on that night when the whole village would gather, just actually there, because I'm in my mum's right now, across the road there,
Yeah.
and we'd be gathering all stuff for the bonfire for days beforehand, and it was just so magical. So yeah, maybe let's bring that kind of, well, yeah, let's bring that energy and go and find our child. Go back into the waters and also go down into the deepest part
Mhm.
of you, because that's where you need to shine from. Your
Yeah.
sovereignty is there in the center, and you shine from that place, not from what the world wants from you, but actually from what you know is your truth, and your place in the world, and your shining is so needed right now. So
Mhm.
that's our invitation, or
Mhm.
should we say the demand of this summer solstice. Mm.
Mhm.
So we've come up with two practices that you might like to do, kind of personal ritual exercises, practices. So why don't you start, Charlotte? Because it's, if you do Charlotte's first and then do mine, or of course do neither or do one, whatever you like. But let's do it a little bit more linear.
Yeah. So I feel like it would be really nice to do my one first, because then it makes a lot more sense of what you might be doing during Mari's ritual. But um not everyone's going to love this, and actually I've just thought of an alternative for people who aren't particularly fond of writing, because I know it's not everyone's to do. But my invitation is, connecting to the magic of Neptune, connecting to the innocence of the child, is to start a story with once upon a time, and then write your life story as a fairy tale. It can be as long or short as you like, but just remember, you do get out what you put in. So, if you write 4 sentences, fine, but you're probably not going to journey very far into your fairy tale. Whereas if you actually let yourself go, you don't ever have to show this to anyone unless you want to. It's entirely for you, but let yourself fly with it, and allow that, um, curious, imaginative, dreamlike child part come through, and just go. And it it can be as strange or as weird, or as unconventional as you like. The main thing is that you sort of enjoy the process. It probably will bring up some emotions. It often does, because writing your life in review is always quite an
Mm.
intense experience. But make it fun. You know, it doesn't have to be a kind of, oh God, and then this happened, and then this person left, and then, my parents split up, and it was all, try, and you can even rename characters with silly names, or, however you want to, but try and make it as imaginative as you can. There will probably be resistance before you do this, because there always is before a process that is potentially going to bring things up, but it's really worth it if it resonates as an exercise. And you might find that you actually want to read it to someone afterwards, or even just read it back to yourself. It's a really beautiful thing to do. And I was just going to say, if you really like, I don't like writing, it makes me freeze, I'm not into it, it doesn't work, a little child version of yourself, like a doll, just out of sticks or flowers, and whatever you can find. It doesn't have to be completely, a completely accurate representation of what you look like when you were 3, but um a sort of doll version of you, that you take around with you during, for maybe a week or two, and just have like your child with you.
Mm.
And you can have like, just treat them like a real being, have conversations with them, consult them, take them places, take them to the woods, um, play with your child, play with the inner you. You could do both of those if you feel so inclined, but again, if you're not so drawn to the writing thing, then maybe making the little small you, the small self, and having it with you could be another way for you to engage with your innocence and your magic.
Nice. I like it. Yeah, the power of that.
Mm.
Um, and bringing the magic in, and yeah, it's so powerful. I've done that exercise before, and it's really powerful. And then my suggestion as a personal ritual is that you, because one of the things that in folk tradition around the solstice is that herbs were harvested, not just folk tradition, but the ancient druids harvested the herbs in a very ritualistic way. So to harness the energy of the sun and the healing properties of the sun. So what I often do is I just get a bowl of water and I pick some herbs, like St. John's wort is a beautiful herb to pick because it's so connected to renewal, and also, you know, whatever. I often put rose petals in too, and I just put them in the water and leave them to over at noon, just over a kind of full day, out in the sunlight, and let the herbs infuse. And it's nice to do it around, on the weekend of the solstice. And then use that water to just kind of wash away anything that's standing in the way of you and your shining brightly in the world. I mean, or, again, if, when you do the exercise around the fairy tale, or, work a little with your inner child, it's like, what's no longer, or what is it that keep kind of takes you off your path? What old pattern, what aspect of you is just no longer serving you? And you're not getting rid of it, which is really important. You're just transforming it in the alchemy of the fire and the water. So light your fires, write your fairy tales, and then get your water and alchemize it all. That's what we have to offer at this time at the solstice. Thank you, Charlotte, for joining me. It's been great as always.
Absolute
Lovely,
pleasure.
love these conversations. And we will be back for the great ripening of the harvest at the beginning of August. So we'll see you then for the next edition of The Wisdom of Cycles.